Hello and welcome to today's episode of pianoTV. We are going to do a tutorial of Czerny's Study in E-flat Major, Opus 139, number 49. There's a lot of Czerny studies and a lot of different numbers. As with all tutorials, I'm going to be playing through this piece so you can kind of follow along, get a feel for it. And then we're going to talk some of the details. So some of the details in this piece that particularly stand out are the Alberti bass pattern. It's got some finger pedaling. We're going to talk details like what key it's in, and we're going to talk about beautiful phrasing. So let's get started. It's a great idea to learn etudes and studies on the piano because they teach you really specific skills, the kind of things that you would develop if you were playing things like scales and arpeggios and stuff like that. But they're more interesting to play than scales because it's actually a piece. Some composers like Chopin believed it was better to do etudes and just kind of like forego doing any scales and exercises like that, although other composers like Liszt was a big adherent to practicing scales and stuff, so depends on your school of thought. I think both have value in their own way. We've done Czerny playthroughs on this channel before at a beginner level, and you might want to check those out if you're new to Czerny. The awesome thing about Czerny, and the reason that I like to pretty much consistently reapproach him from beginner level to intermediate to advanced, is because he was a teacher and wrote a ton of material for all ages and levels of students. And his music and his studies are really valuable for building skills at any level. So before we get to the playthrough in just a moment here, let's spend like 30 seconds talking about the backstory of this piece. So really quick Czerny primer. He was a student of Beethoven's. He kind of straddled the late classical, early romantic era, but he's by all intents and purposes a classical composer. And he was a very successful and lucrative teacher. The study we're looking at today is from his collection called 100 Progressive Studies, Opus 139. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a collection of 100 short etudes. Most of them are very short, and they range in difficulty from pretty much a beginner level all the way through like an intermediate level. And if you're looking for studies and technique builders and stuff like that, you might want to check out this entire collection as opposed to just like this one single piece from it. Anyway, let's have a listen. As always, I like to start by going over the basic concepts in a piece that we do a tutorial for. So first of all, this is a starting point for any piece, is what is the key signature? We've got 3 flats here. I've talked about figuring this out in other videos, so if this doesn't make sense to you, you can go check some of those out, figuring out key signatures. But anyway, let's just look at this quickly. So the key of F has 1 flat. So if we want to figure out the key that has 2 flats, we got to go back 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's actually going to land here because that would be augmented. Anyway, again, don't want to get too far into it. B flat has 2 flats in it. So if we want to find the key that has 3 flats, we got to go down another fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we get E flat, which has 3 flats. And this study is also called Study in E-flat Major, so it kind of gives you the answer like that too. So if you've never played an E-flat major scale, now might be the time to give it a try. I like to review the key of whatever piece I'm learning by going through its scales. Scales that start on flats have a little bit of a different finger pattern than some of the like C major scale, because you want to avoid using your thumb and your pinky on black keys. So since E flat major starts on an E flat, a black key, we want to start with finger 2 instead of starting with our thumb. Again, the goal with any black key, or the goal with any scale, is to keep your thumb and pinky off the black keys. So in the left hand, you can see I'm starting with finger number 3, alternating with 4. And this will just help you get acquainted with the notes. Next, let's take a look at the form. I always like reviewing the structure of a piece because it gives me an idea of how to practice and exactly what I'm working with. This form is super easy to pinpoint because of how it's divided by the double bar lines. You can clearly see that this is two-part form. You've got part 1 here, part A, and then you have part B here. Two-part form is also known as binary form. Binary just means two. One feature of binary form is that in each part, they're pretty different, but they're not like wildly different. So you can see in the second part, the rhythm changes maybe a little bit in the melody, but the left hand's pretty consistent even though some of the notes change. All right, so let's take a look at the Alberti bass. Alberti bass is just a broken chord pattern. You can see it in the left hand. Basically, you alternate from the lowest note of a chord to the highest, to the middle, to the highest. Da 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 da, kind of like a zigzag. In this piece, there's a variety of different chords used. You can see the tonic used at the beginning. Tonic is the first chord, E flat. That's going to be like your kind of like bass line chord in this piece because this piece is in E flat. So it makes sense that E flat chord would be kind of like the bass line. You alternate to the dominant, which is always the second most important chord in a piece, and then you're back to E flat. You're mainly altering between these two notes. You've got some tension notes in here where you have an F7 and so on, but I don't want to get too much into chord theory today. That's not the study aspect of this study. So as if the alternating Alberti bass pattern wasn't enough, we also have something in this piece called finger pedaling. So finger pedaling is basically when you have one note that's sustained underneath the other notes. So with one finger, you're holding down the first note of the Alberti bass pattern and then playing the other three over top of it while keeping that note sustained. So in your left hand, it's going to be fingers 4 and 5 that are doing all of the sustaining work here. Let's take a look at these on the piano and I can show you how it works there. The finger pedaling is going to be done almost exclusively with your left hand finger 4 and pinky. So finger 4 and finger 5. You want to get used to anchoring that finger on the bass note. Your finger is going to want to come up when you play the other three notes, but you really want to discipline that finger to stay down when you press it. Like such. I'm kind of doing it in slow motion so you can see, but the temptation is going to be to like, so really watch. Finger pedaling gives us a really nice sustained sound, and you can't really accomplish the same sound with the regular pedal, which I also use lightly in this piece, but without the finger pedal, it doesn't have quite the same sound. It's subtle, but it's different. It gives those bass notes a sense of weight, and I feel that they ring through more clearly. Luckily in this piece, the Alberti bass pattern is just to be played at a moderate speed. It's not fast. What you'll come across in a lot of classical pieces is a really fast, like Allegro, Alberti bass, which takes some getting used to if you've never done it before. Anyway, this moderate speed is a great place to start. Now let's have a look at the phrasing. Surprise, there is none, but just because Czerny, well, actually that's not entirely true. There's a little bit of phrasing here marked in the sheet music. I think different editions have different phrasing marked in here. But anyway, just because Czerny didn't manually draw in the phrases everywhere, it doesn't mean he wanted us to play these notes like choppy or without expression. In fact, the specific playing instructions for this, dolce cantabile, means sweetly and in a singing style. So what I usually say is that the best way to figure out how to play in a singing style is to literally sing the tune. I mean, if you're at home by yourself, whatever. Don't worry about embarrassing yourself. Even if you're not a good singer, this still helps. Where are you naturally wanting to draw breath when you sing this? That will give you a sense of where the phrase breaks are going to be. So what I notice when I sing through it is the phrases almost feel like they go in 2 bars like this. Like this would feel like a good place to breathe right here. This might feel like a good place to breathe, and so on. So not only do we want to create a lifting sound at the end of each kind of like invented phrase, we also want to give that phrase some shape. Where's the high point of the phrase? Where's the low point of the phrase? I tend to imagine the notes following the shape of the phrase, rising and swelling and then falling. I keep that in mind when I'm playing the melody on the piano. I really try to vary how I hit the keys so that they're not all the same volume, so they sound lifelike in a singing style. And last but certainly not least, we got this tricky little ending with a bunch of descending eighth notes. And as if that wasn't enough, the finger pattern's weird and you've got all these tiny little trills on the way down. You can probably already tell this part's going to need special attention. So one thing I want you to do, and this is something that students have a tendency to do, don't leave it to the very end and then neglect it. Like, you'd hate to be able to perform this piece beautifully, and then when you get to the ending, you just butcher it because you didn't work on it enough. The best way to start learning this part is without the ornaments. Just like completely ignore the trills, because the finger pattern needs some work in getting used to just even on its own. And it's easier to pay attention to that when you're not distracted by a bunch of extra notes. Once you've got the hang of this section without ornaments and you're comfortable with the finger patterns, that's when you would add the ornaments. So I would learn it like this first. So I just went through it without any of the trills. I still did that one at the end. It's not a difficult one to throw in there. But once you're really comfortable with that finger pattern, and you can do it without too much thought, then it's time to start adding in those little trills. And the way you do these trills, you play the note that's written. So the first trill lands on a D. So we start with a D, then we play the note just above it, and then we end with the original note. So in slow motion, it kind of has a 3 note, instead of just playing 1 note at a time, it's 3 notes at a time. So again, the best way is to just learn this hand separately in slow motion. And then once you can do it a little bit faster, then you can start getting the left hand and so on. But this is a tricky section, and expect to put in quite a bit more work into this part than the other parts of the piece. But that's basically all there is to it. And that is all for today's video and tutorial. If you haven't noticed, I've been going through about grade 3 level tutorials for the last many months, probably like 6 months or so. And we're kind of nearing the end of that. I want to start getting into grade 4 stuff in the sort of near future, maybe in the next few months. But I like to do tutorials in a progressive manner. So I'm not going to be doing tutorials for grade 10 level pieces or anything anytime soon, just so you kind of know what to expect and what my general plan is. I'm sorry if you're at a higher level and you'd like higher level tutorials. I'll get there eventually. You just have to be incredibly patient. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next video. The lowest note of a chord, whoops,